Hey, I picked Kurt Hahn. I picked him not necessarily because his contributions were, shaped mainstream education, but in a lot of ways, his ideas about curriculum are kind of not mainstream, but I think they're valuable to consider when we're thinking about what we think constitutes a good curriculum to promote learning for students. So, a little history about Kurt Hahn. He was born in Germany to a wealthy Jewish family. He was pre-World War One. He loved learning, but he hated the system that was set up. They had this like major test that determined who went to university or not, and he ended up going to the university, but he just really felt stifled by the system that they had in place. So ended up he did like I said, he went to the university to study. He ended up studying in England, and I think he went to Oxford. So at the start of World War One, it was really like a shock. England and Germany were at war, and he had grown to love the culture and stuff in England. So it was really hard on him. And out of response to that, he formed his first school. He worked in partnership with a prince. I think his name was von Baden, Max von Baden, and they formed this Salem School, or I'm not going to pronounce the German, but it was really in response to World War One and trying to create like an oasis of peace. And basically restoring the parts of the German culture that they loved and they thought were, tainted by the war. So some early ideas about curriculum that came out. These are the precepts that he instituted for the Salem School. First precept was that he wanted to give kids the opportunity for self-discovery. A lot of the ideas about curriculum that he had were very experience-based. He wanted to give kids experiences and he thought those experiences were valuable to teaching kids. Secondly, he thought, hey, failure is not something we need to shy away from. It's something that's part of the learning process. Life is that way. And a lot of the successful people in life have learned to deal with failure, and he thought it was a valuable part of the curriculum. So a lot of one valuable thing he also included was he thought people should be aware and experience working towards the greater good. He thought that it enriched people's education, and he really went by this like classic, Greek idea that you should develop the whole person. We're not just teaching content areas. We're developing a human being, and so this was kind of demonstrated that. He liked periods of silence. He'd send kids off for a walk in the woods. Just by themselves. He thought quiet reflection was part of the whole process to like formulate ideas and things, which brings us to the imagination. That was an integral part of what he thought was valuable in a product in a student. So he thought, hey, if we want that as a valuable product, we have to include it in the curriculum. His attitude towards athletics were interesting. He thought that placing these athletes on a high pedestal was a disservice to them, but he also felt that physical fitness was like I said, he had that classic mindset that we're training a whole person. So it was actually part of the regimen. They'd wake up and do like a physical exercise before starting their day. A lot of the students, as you probably could see from the campus, were very wealthy students. But he also thought that a good mix of normal kids would create benefits for everybody involved. So, he wanted to mix in normal kids that had normal lives, and he thought that this would create a valuable experience for all of the students. Okay, so World War II came and basically put an end to the school. Let's see, Kurt Hahn, basically it was a dividing thing. So it polarized the whole country really, but definitely his views as well. And this quote, says, hey, you've got to break ties with the school, or you got to break ties with Hitler. And ultimately he was thrown in jail. And luckily it was early on in the war, and he was able to escape, and he fled to the United Kingdom. He ended up in Scotland, where he formed his second school, the Gordonstoun School. This is actually a school still today. Princes and aristocracy still seek out this school as a highly recognized boarding school in the United Kingdom. But a lot of the same ideas, principles that he had formed in the earlier school, he carried over into this one. So, as when we think about our content, seeing a picture like this where kids are laying flagstone in the common area, we would probably think, hey, does this benefit is this worthwhile really? We're really time limited, but seeing kids do this is pretty interesting, because his ideas on curriculum, he felt the experiences were valuable. So here you've got probably a mix of aristocracy and maybe a kid whose father actually is a stonemason, or and they're working together and they're doing this project, and he thought that benefited the students. Another part of his curriculum here was that he focused on project-based learning. So students had to pick a meaningful project to them, and they were given a lot of flexibility. It could be a piece of artwork, it could be a musical composition, could be restoring a car or building a piece of furniture. But these were things that the students picked, and the faculty came alongside them and helped them with this. And I thought this was interesting because, in science, I'm a science teacher, we talk about inquiry-based discovery. And I think having a meaningful experience for kids to take part in is like a critical component that maybe we have missed out on. That hey, if these students here that are building this motorcycle, their interests are driving them because they know that this is they're going to ride this thing, they're going to drive it around, and so the real experience drives their inquiry. So I think that's valuable to consider. So some quotes here from Kurt Hahn. He, like I said, he was classically minded. He wanted to bring out the humanity in his students. So a lot of that was through experiences, like we said. But here we've got students, and they're in the mountains, and a lot of his ideas kind of he wanted students to be in these remote and challenging environments, because he thought, he wasn't actually teaching mountaineering, or he wasn't teaching them about sailing or the sea per se, but he thought that it was valuable to learn through these experiences. And here he really felt that adventure was a key component to accessing the interests of a student. Interestingly, he always had a hat on. He had a health condition where he couldn't be out in the sun very, very often. He had to retire to a quiet, dark room because of, I think he may have had heat stroke or something like that affected him for the rest of his life. Here we've got students. They're on the fire brigade volunteer, and they responded to real problems in the community. That's a derailment there. He thought, getting the students to view the greater good was part of his curriculum as well. So it's just interesting to think about. Ultimately, he formed the Outward Bound, which is probably where most of us know the name Kurt Hahn. It started in Wales, but it was much of the same, and it still exists today. So we may not run into the Outward Bound curriculum necessarily, but it still is an effective and valuable curriculum that's taught in Outward Bound schools in the United States. But that's just a look at some of his ideas that I thought were valuable. Thanks.